Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just got into a couple of Big Ten games, a huge one for Indiana to keep their undefeated season alive without Curtis Work at quarterback. So definitely something to watch there. And then Penn State, maybe a little bit of a look-ahead spot going towards Ohio State. I do have Indiana and Penn State winning those games, but there are definitely some upset alerts that will add to this group, which is going to be absolutely incredible to watch. Oh, actually, I will talk about that one here in a second, Anthony. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's going to be a very interesting game down there. No two ways about that. But let's get into a couple of upset alerts around the country here. SMU Duke is a very fascinating game to me. I think this one's more interesting for a number of different reasons, but the travel dynamics are fascinating, and it's the reality of the world of conference realignment right about now, because SMU was at Stanford last week. Now they got to make their way all the way over to Durham, North Carolina to play another game, and it's a hard-nosed team that can really play some good defense with Manny Diaz leading the way there. So definitely one of those games that could get just a little bit sketchier. And the thing about this one is Duke's defense has the ability to make them one-dimensional, especially because RJ Maryland is officially out of this game. If you can stop, maybe even if you can stop the run, then they won't necessarily have an answer in the pass game because RJ Maryland is not out there, a very, very important player for that team, and makes me a little bit nervous about me loving SMU down the stretch. But it's one of those games where for an upset to happen, Malik Murphy just has to make big plays down the field. He has that huge arm. He has all that arm talent. He's got to be able to put it on a couple of receivers downfield because this is the 97th ranked pass defense in the entire country. And Jordan Moore is a very dangerous receiver on the outside for Duke, so maybe you hit a couple of those big-time plays downfield, and that totally changes this game. This is one of those games that, frankly, if there wasn't that travel aspect in it, I wouldn't necessarily think about it too much. I think SMU has the ability to win this one, win it pretty comfortably. I think Duke was one of those teams that was just eking out wins against not so great teams early on in the year, and they were undefeated 5-0 walking into that Tech game. But ever since, it's been a little bit like pulling teeth to get them to get going in. I think SMU is able to win this one. I probably have this one on a 1 out of 5 on the upset meter scale because at the end of the day, not necessarily one that I'm super worried about, at least from a personnel perspective. Maybe that travel gets a little bit involved and makes this one close, but I like SMU to win. And then you got Rutgers USC. Frankly, USC is just going to be on this every single time that they're favored because this is a team that I don't know what to expect from the rest of the way, especially with a couple of the losses that they've taken. But both these teams are coming off 3 straight losses. It's a short week. It's happening Friday night, and cross-country travel for Rutgers is not necessarily a great aspect for them going into this game. All that being said, USC had a ton of expectations going into this year. They all officially came to an end last week. Now, they pretty much came to an end a while ago, but at the end of the day, they officially got buried last week, and the question becomes, how does this team respond? Does this team have the mental toughness? Does the team have the leadership that they need to go up against the Rutgers team that if they're going to win this game, they got to lean on the run? And it sounds like Sam Brown the fifth is going to be out with an injury in this game, so Kyle Monaghan is going to have to step up huge. He's going to have a ton on his shoulders in this game, but Rutgers is a team that can definitely get that run game going, and as we've seen with USC, they have the ability to stop the run game for about 3 quarters. That fourth quarter becomes a little bit interesting. So maybe they can keep it close for long enough. I like Ethan Kaliak-Manis to make enough plays to keep this one close. At the end of the day, I do question what USC has to fight for, but I also have big concerns about what Rutgers can do on offense. I don't necessarily think they're going to be able to get a ton going, and I think when you look at USC, I think Miller Moss has enough left in the tank to make some big plays in this game. Probably a 2 out of 5, just because of the dynamics of the run game for Rutgers, the conference play. But at the end of the day, I do think USC probably gets this win when they very badly need it. And we got to talk about this one. Texas heads on the road to play Vanderbilt. If I didn't talk about this one, I'd be doing you guys a disservice because absolutely an upset alert because it's kind of a funny game to break down because even through 7 weeks, kind of hard to tell just how good Texas is. You know, you had those you had wins early on in the season where they were just dominant, really playing incredible football, not necessarily showing a lot of gaps. And then last week, they played the elite team of Georgia and got their lunch handed to them. They absolutely got dominated from start to finish in that game, and I think they got to be really careful as they head into this week. Now, they should be fine, at least on paper. Vandy is an absolute problem. And the big thing here is, can Vandy get home on Quinn Ewers? They have 14 sacks on the season, so they have the ability to get there. Maybe not quite against this elite offensive line for Texas, or at least what looked like elite before they got into this one. So that offensive line definitely needs a little bit of a bounce back in. It's the 94th ranked pass defense on the other side. So you give Quinn Ewers time, he should be more than capable of dicing them up and making all types of big plays. The other big thing here is, can Diego Pavia make the same problems for the Texas defense that he did for the Alabama defense? I do feel very, very confident saying the Texas defense is, I don't want to say miles better, but comfortably better than the Alabama defense. That being said, there's a lot of issues that Diego Pavia can cause regardless of how good your defense is. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Texas in kind of that bounce back spot. Feels like a pretty good test for them. It feels like a game where they should be able to win. They should be able to get it done, but you are going on the road against a team that has plenty to throw at you, and it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think Quinn Ewers will get up and get rolling in this game. I think I think Vanderbilt is dangerous, but I do think Texas is able to get this win. Maybe a 3 out of 5 on the upset scale just because it is Vanderbilt in 2024, but at the end of the day, I do think Texas gets right. I picked them by 20 yesterday, not necessarily going off that by any means. We got to talk about this one. This is a very, very interesting one that's kind of being buried in everything, all the craziness of this week. But Kansas State is a huge one on Saturday night. I think when you look at this Kansas State team, they're starting to kind of find themselves. They're starting to play really good football, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Avery Johnson starting to throw the ball downfield a little bit more consistently. Kansas has not won a game in this series since 2008. A lot of things going in the way of Kansas State. But nothing is normal in the Big 12. Everything always happens a little bit different out there, and I think this is one of those moments where it feels like everything is pulling in one direction. Honestly, with the line only being 10, feels a little bit sketchy. It feels like Vegas is trying to tell us something, but the thing about Kansas season is it's officially gone. It was a very, very tough year. It was one of those years where they got ambushed from the jump and just were never really able to recover. That being said, Jalen Daniels has kind of found something over the last couple of weeks against Arizona State and Houston. 507 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. Does he have that one Herculean performance in him? Does he have that one performance that puts him in, gives him that season that, it's been disappointing, no doubt about that, but a win over Kansas State salvages a lot for this fan base, for these players, and for this coach. So it's going to be interesting to watch this one. The Kansas State pass defense gives up almost 300 yards per game. Maybe Kansas and that trio of wide receivers can really get going, and it's one of those games that definitely a little bit worrisome for Kansas State. Probably a 4 out of 5 on the upset scale, because this one could definitely get sketchy, and if it does, then Kansas State's looking at the rest of the season with a lot of question marks going forward. And then we got this one down there in the group of 5, and a Tulane team that is just trying their hardest to keep their CFP hopes alive. I still very much think that they're in the hunt. Their only 2 losses are to Oklahoma and Kansas State, so feel pretty good about what Tulane is right now. Now, they're playing a team in North Texas that can throw the ball around the yard. Chandler Morris, coming over from TCU, has the second best pass offense in the entire country with North Texas. And then on the other side, Darian Mensah has become a star in New Orleans this year, has been absolutely incredible for that Tulane team. And the big difference in this one is just the difference in styles. There's so many ways that they go about business, but North Texas runs about 59% pass plays, good for 12th in the country. Tulane runs about 62.5% run plays, good for 9th in the country. So definitely going to be interesting to watch how these two teams go about each other. Tulane does have the receivers to make those plays, but maybe it's one of those games where you just grind it out with Mekhi Hughes on the ground and he makes just all plays all over the field. But the big thing here for North Texas, you got to play from out in front. I don't think this Tulane team is going to be able to be caught if you let them get out in front in this game by 10, 14 points. They're going to be rolling downhill and be almost impossible to get. Now, North Texas can throw the ball around the yard, so it's not necessarily that they can't come back from behind, but I just think this Tulane offense is just too much to deal with. You're going to want to play from in front and then force Tulane to throw that ball downfield. Maybe some mistakes come then. And then Tulane has a fairly sizable advantage on the defensive side of the ball. North Texas is giving up 38 points per game, 125th in the country, so definitely a little bit of one where North Texas is going to have to score quite a few points to stay in this one. I do think it's dangerous, probably a 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 on the upset meter, but at the end of the day, if North Texas isn't scoring 45 points in this game, they're probably not winning it. So definitely something to watch there, and one of those games that if it gets up into the 40 versus 40 or 42-40 realm, then things get a little bit more sketchy for Tulane in this one. And then finally, we have Arkansas heading over to Mississippi State this upcoming weekend. Arkansas coming off that really tough loss to LSU. Mississippi State coming off 3 straight losses to 3 of the best teams in the entirety of the SEC. And it's really interesting to me for one very specific reason. This is somehow the easiest game that Michael Van Buren will play this entire year. He played Texas, UGA, and Alabama, and Texas A&M at home for his first 3 starts of his career. That is absolutely insane. I don't think you can start a career any worse than that, but he's played really good football. He's been really, really effective at that quarterback position, has made a number of plays, threw for over 300 yards against Georgia a couple of weeks ago, and now he plays an Arkansas team that has been susceptible to give up a couple of those big plays. Now, they've been a lot better over the last couple of weeks, but there are going to be plays to be made in this game, especially on the ground, because that's what LSU was able to get going last week. So definitely something to watch there. I think Arkansas has a huge game against Ole Miss on the horizon. Mississippi State is staring down a matchup with UMass, so a little bit of that scheduling going for the Bulldogs in this one. And another interesting thing to watch here is Arkansas only hitting about 60% of their field goals. They're on their second kicker of the year. And then Mississippi State's Kyle Ferry, 6 for 7 this year, has been very, very consistent. Definitely something to watch in that close game that could come down to the wire. And this is an Arkansas team coming off a really tough loss, heading into a really tough game against Ole Miss. They're on the road in an environment that's really tough. They're playing a quarterback that is finally going to get a little bit of a break from playing the elite teams in the country. This one is as tough as you can get. I think this is a 5 out of 5 on the upset meter. Definitely one that Arkansas should be worried about, and one that I might actually like Mississippi State in. But I'll probably get into that a little bit more tomorrow, and I think there's plenty of upset alerts all around the country. So be on the lookout for them, because it's going to come at some point, no doubt about that. But let's take our final break here, and then we got to do a little bit of a whip around to a number of the other games that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. We will get to that Miami-Florida State game, Anthony, I promise you that. But let's take our last break here, and we'll be right back with all of that.